Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Miles with the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for dialing in today for our Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber Community COVID-19 call. We're pleased to have so many listening in to hear what action steps our leadership is taking to face COVID-19. We're also pleased to be partnering with Scott Grooms and his team at the Beaufort County channel. This has allowed us to reach over 20,000 people in our community that tune into these calls to hear from specific updates from our speakers. As you all know, our major economic driver is tourism. And in the past 3 weeks, the industry has been forced on its heels, reacting to a crisis that continues to evolve by the day, if not by the hour. Here's a brief snapshot of what that business looks like today. Currently, hotel occupancy is at 9.4%. which equates to approximately 217 guests for all of our full service hotels on the island. Several hotels have closed, including this week's closure of the Omni Oceanfront Resort, which will be opening on May 21st, and Palmyra Inn and Suites, along with the Inn and Club at Harbortown and Montage Palmetto Bluff, along with Disney's Hilton Head Island Resort. Select service properties are currently running at 11.1% occupancy, which equates to 164 guests. The lion's share of our home and villa rental companies voluntarily stopped taking reservations last week for the next 2 weeks. They've been looking at the situation in 2-week increments and adjusting their plans as necessary. Our goal here at your chamber remains to communicate, convey, and connect our community. We're working right alongside so many of you 7 days a week in support of our businesses and our community. Facts over fear, it's more critical now than ever as we head into what many experts are saying will be the peak of the pandemic challenge. With great freedom comes great personal responsibility as a community, as a state, and as a nation. We have a full agenda today, including U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who we'll be hearing from later on in our call. Let's get started with our panel. As we know, so much has transpired in the last week, which really seems like a year, and we're very interested in hearing those updates. To get things started for us today, again, back with us from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the Vice President of Public Policy and a good friend to all, and that's Tom Sullivan. Tom, welcome, and thank you for taking so much time out of your schedule to be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. You're doing great work getting the word out to small businesses, not only in the Hilton Head area, but across the country. So thank you for letting me join. At the U.S. Chamber, we really have a similar principle to what you just outlined, and that is that no family and no business should be bankrupted by the coronavirus. And so we put all our effort and your effort and over 1,600 local and state chambers of commerce to push Congress and the president to pass 3 laws in 3 weeks. Now that those laws are being implemented, we're shifting our gears a little bit to making sure small businesses know what resources are available to them. So right now, SBA is up and running. As you know, they have an economic disaster loan program that has been around for about 60 years, and they're accepting applications for disaster loans. These are loans that are at 3.75% for 30 years, all interest and payments deferred for a year. They streamlined their application process, so it takes about 15 to 30 minutes to go through the application. It's all online. That's at sba.gov. Again, their website is sba.gov. You'll see the online application for disaster loan. On the third screen of that loan, there is a question that asks if you would like to be considered for a $10,000 emergency grant. The small business owners who I've spoken with have all told me that they want that grant and they are checking that box. And I simply pass that information on to you and your members. We are recommending that is a first step to try to get bridge money for small businesses to weather the pandemic. And then starting this Friday, banks will start loaning under what's called the Paycheck Protection Program. This is part of a law that just got signed last week. That is a loan program that Treasury released the terms just yesterday, so Tuesday. The interest on those loans are 0.5%, fixed rate to be paid back over 2 years. There's been a lot of discussion on how these loans work. There is a tremendously helpful guide that can be found at uschamber.com/SB loans. Again, that's uschamber.com/SB loans. The calculation for that loan is your average monthly payroll from last year, multiply it by 2.5, and you get what the Paycheck Protection Program loans amount should be. Then at the end of June, you go back to your bank, you talk about how that money was spent, and you're able to turn that loan into a grant. So there are parameters on how you spend the loan money. If you meet those parameters that are basically to spend it on payroll, then you're able to turn that loan into a grant at the end of June. There are a number of other parameters around that our guide does a pretty good job of explaining. But most importantly, those answers are going to be answered by the local bankers who have such a good relationship with our small businesses, not only in Hilton Head, but all around the country. So we're very excited that the Treasury Secretary and the head of SBA, Jovita Carranza, have moved with lightning speed to make sure that cash gets on Main Street as soon as this week.
Tom, thank you. And that's a great segue into our next speaker. Before I get there, I will share with all of our registrants that are on our call today. We have a PowerPoint from Tom and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that we'll be providing to you after the call. Again, Tom, we know how busy you are, and thank you so much for taking time to be with us again this morning.
Thank you. We're fighting for you, and we're fighting for all those businesses that are your members. So we're hoping that more and more of them take advantage of the great resources you're providing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Let's move on to our next speaker now, and that's William Furman, the South Carolina Area Director with the SBA. William?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
Good.
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah. So Tom kind of stole a little bit of my thunder. He did a pretty good job of explaining the disaster programs, but I would like to add a few things to that. For those businesses that have already applied for the economic injury disaster loan, they need to go back into the system. And again, for those businesses that applied, I guess, before this week, before Monday, they would need to go back into the SBA grant portal and reapply for the grant. So what they applied for initially would have been the economic injury disaster loan. When the CARES bill passed, it did include a grant portion for the EIDL, as we call it, the EIDL loan. So those businesses, if you applied before this week, go back in, reapply. It's a pretty straightforward process, not very difficult. If you would like to receive the grant portion, and the grant portion would be the first disbursement of the EIDL loan, and so the Office of Disaster Assistance has made the statement that they'll get this the $10,000 out within 3 days of receipt, so that those funds should come very quickly. And so once you do that, you can start to focus on the Paycheck Protection Program. As Tom mentioned, that is a loan that will be administered through our commercial lenders. Our commercial lenders will receive a 100% guarantee from SBA, so they don't have any exposure on that. SBA is using them as a conduit to get these funds into the businesses that need it. And we're currently working with the lenders. We've had a lot of interest from lenders that have not participated in the past are coming on board now. So I think most of the lenders that you have in Beaufort County and Hilton Head will participate. Another piece of the puzzle that we need is the SBA final rule. And so a lot of the general requirements have been published. Again, Tom mentioned that they're on the Treasury website, so you can take a look at that. They are on the SBA website. We have them there. And we're currently working them with the lenders, but we still need the final rule, which is basically the instructions and guidelines that will govern the program. So hopefully we'll get that soon. We'll start taking applications this Friday, which is April 3rd for small businesses and sole proprietors. April 10th, we'll open the window for independent contractors and self-employed individuals. And so, again, this is not a direct loan from SBA. It is a loan guarantee that goes through commercial lenders. And we've had a lot of confusion on that. So the EIDL loan is directly from SBA. The Paycheck Protection program is run through commercial lenders. You can apply for both programs. There's been a lot of confusion on this as well, but you can apply for both programs as long as loan proceeds are used for separate purposes. So you just need to be careful on that. The Paycheck Protection program is intended for payroll, so my advice would be to focus those funds on payroll. Does allow for a few other uses, but I would focus on payroll. And then if you have an EIDL loan, I would focus on other costs for working capital. Basically, use those for working capital loans other than payroll. Finally, and this is big news, didn't really see this one coming, but for all existing SBA borrowers, SBA will be making the next 6 months of loan payments, starting with payments that were due after March 27th. So businesses that have SBA loans, SBA will make the loan payment for them. They will not be required to make those payments. This is not a deferral. This is actually SBA cutting checks to banks to pay for those borrowers with SBA loans. So that's a big piece as well. And so that's, we've got a lot of things going. We have a lot of moving parts currently. I don't know if you've heard my other phone ringing, but it's ringing off the hook. We're getting a lot of interest, but we are anxiously awaiting to get this PPP program, as we're calling it, Paycheck Protection Program, off the ground and up and running. So with that's what I have for this morning.
William, thank you. And we've had a few questions come in that if you've got a minute, I'll ask you. And the first one is,
sure.
if we apply for the payroll protection program, should we wait to apply for the EIDL? There's a question on the application for the PPP asking about any EIDL loans and requiring an addendum. I don't want an EIDL application to hold up my PPP application.
So again, what the business has to be careful of is that you cannot use those two programs for the same purposes. So you're going to have a good accounting system. You're going to need to be able to document and trace those funds to where they are spent. And so that's just a decision that small business is going to need to make. But you can certainly have both programs. I mean, a lot of people, EIDL was up first. A lot of businesses jumped out there and have applied for EIDL and will be receiving those funds. And so, I don't think that would be an issue. That will be something. I mean, you'll be working with your local banker, so that would be a conversation that you could have with your lender to make sure that it doesn't create any issues on their end.
Thank you. The next question, Tom, or William, is where do you request a loan dollar amount on idle, or how is that amount determined?
Yeah, that's a question we get a lot. So you actually do not submit a requested loan amount on an idle loan. SBA does that calculation for you. They will compare last year's revenue to this year's revenue and make a determination on what the actual loss of revenue was, and they will make the loan based on that loss. So for idle loans, the loan is to be used for working capital purposes, just to help that business pay bills. It's there to fund them until they can get through this event and get their business back up and running and stabilized. So it's working capital only.
All right, last question we'll do with you, William, is the government is supplying monies to small businesses to pay employees, keeping their pay moving forward. Thus, why would my company tell employees to file for unemployment?
Yeah, so, and I'm not an expert on unemployment, but the intent of the Paycheck Protection Program is to keep those employees on payroll and off of unemployment. So a small business is going to have to sit down and make that determination as to what is best for them, to go forward. It can be complex. It can be confusing. Understand that. And the Paycheck Protection Program, to receive the forgivable loan, they have to maintain those employees. And so if they start letting the employees go, the employees go on unemployment, their percentage of forgiveness is going to be reduced.
Okay, William, thank you very much, and thank you for the participants that have asked those questions. We'll keep the agenda moving and move on to our next speaker, who is Felix Turner. And Felix is the Corporate Affairs Manager with Kroger, and we're happy to add him to the call today. Felix?
Thanks, Bill, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come on and just kind of update you on some of the things that we have going on with Kroger. I know some of the big questions are around supply chain, so I just want to let everyone know that Kroger is committed to being constant. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. We have responsibility to our associates and our customers and communities, and we will continue to be there for you. Just want to thank our associates for really their untiring dedication and commitment to our customers as we navigate through this crisis. Want everybody to know that our supply chain is strong. One of the biggest challenges that we've had definitely has been just keeping up with the demand. I would say that the buying frenzy has definitely slowed. There still is some out there, but for the most part, it has slowed down. But we did take the precautionary step on March 2nd to start limiting a number of items so that we can make sure that everyone had the essential items that they needed. So some of those items include like cold and flu items, hand sanitizer, and then some of the other sanitary items. Of course, toilet paper seems to be just huge for some strange reason. But the panic buying has slowed down. One of the good things is we operate over 37 of our own factories, so that allows us to definitely keep the supply chain from a Kroger standpoint very, very strong. I know some customers may have questions about when product comes in. So all of our Kroger stores receive individual store delivery schedules. So the 3 stores that are there in the area receive them at different times. We replenish the shelves as soon as the product was made available to us. We replenish the shelves as quick as possible so that we can meet the needs of customers. So some stores may receive 1 truck per day. Some may receive several per day, and some may be every other day. So it just really depends on the store location. A lot of vendors have really narrowed down their focus on the things that they're producing. So we can use hand sanitizer, maybe toilet paper, and some of the other large commodities. So where maybe they used to produce 10 or 12 SKUs or particular items, they've narrowed that down to maybe 4 or 5 so that they can meet the needs of the community on high demand items such as cleaning supplies, bread, milk, ground turkey, beef, water. All of those have been really, really high demand items that we've seen vendors really kind of narrow the focus on that. I know home delivery, especially from an Instacart standpoint, and also our grocery pickup are running longer than usual, and it's because of increased demand. So I would tell you, continue to use those services. From an Instacart standpoint, we really were not impacted from some of the walkout strikes that they had earlier in the week. But that whole process, in some cases, is still a lot slower than what it normally is. Please be patient with that and continue to work with the store on the grocery pickup standpoint. And also, there's a couple of numbers that you can call from the Instacart standpoint that can help with that piece. From a hiring standpoint, really, really excited to say that really over the last 15 days, our division, which includes all of Georgia, East Alabama, and South Carolina, we've hired over 2,000 associates, and we still have additional hiring opportunities, really about 400 to 500. In the Hilton Head-Bluffton area, we've hired 81 new associates. And again, that's been in about 2 weeks. So really, really positive response from people in the community. And so very excited to be able to announce that overall. We've also formed several partnerships that you've probably seen with Kroger, with some other national organizations. We've been very proactive as far as from a health and safety standpoint. We are installing new plexiglass shields that will go on each register. If you have Starbucks, they will go in Starbucks as well as the pharmacy areas. We've also installed social distancing floor decals just to remind our customers of the social distance that we're looking for, as well as we try to have someone cleaning the buggies as people come into the store. We've been as far as bonuses for our associates. We're actually giving an appreciation bonus this Friday, $150 to our frontline associates that are part-time, $300 to the full-time associates. And we just announced this morning that for the next 3 weeks, we'll be giving an additional $2 per hour to all of our frontline associates because of the work and the job that they're doing. And then finally, from a community standpoint, we announced a couple of weeks ago that our Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation donated $3 million to Feeding America and No Kid Hungry organizations. So the local food banks there in the area have an opportunity to receive grants from Feeding America. Also in all of our stores, customers have the ability to be able to round up to the nearest dollar at any register, even through self-checkout, that will go directly to this Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation, where local nonprofits that are geared toward hunger and food insecurity can apply for grants. So just a few things. I'm not sure if there's any questions that anyone may have.
Felix, that's a terrific update, and thank you. We've had several questions that have come in for you, and
Yes.
in what you've told us, you've answered all of those questions. So,
Okay.
so thank you for that, and thank you for joining our call this morning.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're going to move on to our next speaker today, and we're fortunate to have with us South Carolina's own Attorney General and that's Alan Wilson. Alan, welcome to the call, and we're looking forward to hearing an update from you.
Hey, well, first off, it's great to be with everyone, and I hope everyone's doing well down there. First off, thank you for allowing me to address this group. One of the things that I was wanting to do was to try to provide some clarity about the role of the AG. Earlier last week, there was a bit of confusion about how our opinion was being interpreted, and I only clarify this because in the future opinion is issued in the interpretation of state law. I wanted people to understand what it is we're actually saying. And then I wanted to provide a little bit of clarity as to the current executive order that the governor has just issued regarding public waterways, beaches, lakes, streams, etc. First, earlier last week, we were getting inundated by calls from all over the state. And actually, we eventually had several legislators call us to get clarity as to how, when it comes to the governor's executive order and local city ordinances being passed, who would preempt who would be controlling, because there was some confusion. One of your local legislators sent me the question, Jeff Bradley, in writing, and so we responded to his question. And one of the things that the opinion was intended to do was to let people know that we don't enforce the law. Our laws are advisory only, but that they are intended to give people clarity as to what will happen if you do X. In this particular case, we concluded based on state law as that was written in the 1970s, and when you put that in conjunction with home rule, basically what we came to the conclusion is that local government does have emergency powers that under home rule, that local municipalities can implement emergency measures and have emergency powers during certain times. However, once there's a state declaration of emergency by the governor, the home rule powers take a back seat and are preempted by the state declaration of emergency. So anything that a city or municipality or county does basically is put in the back seat when the governor declares a state of emergency. And that was written that way as to not have a patchwork of emergency declarations all over the state when the governor has already issued one statewide declaration. With that being said, what does that mean? What did that practically mean? Well, what it practically meant was, and what we said was that we are not going to challenge any cities or counties or municipalities that are seeking to implement their own emergency measures. But somebody in the future might file a lawsuit. It could be a private citizen claiming damages or harm, or maybe an unlawful arrest if they are arrested pursuant to a city ordinance. They might sue that municipality. And so we wanted the municipalities to be aware that they may not have the cover that they otherwise would have under home rule if the governor's implemented a state emergency and you're exercising local authority, which is now preempted. So we didn't want cities to go in blind as to this potential legal exposure. A lot of people were wondering if we were shutting down the beaches. No, our office did not shut down any beaches. We did not open. We don't have that authority. But we were just I kind of tell people, view us as a flashing yellow light, kind of a caution light, saying if you're going to do this, then be aware that there might be a legal exposure down the road. But this is not the time to be filing lawsuits. I also wanted people to know that if a city or municipality does pass an ordinance, regardless of what our opinion says as to its legality, all city ordinances are deemed valid in a court of law until they are thrown out or set aside by a court. Meaning, I was telling the citizens, just because we have given guidance that a city didn't have authority doesn't mean you shouldn't follow that ordinance. We don't want civil unrest. We want people to respect the role that law enforcement is playing, local and state law enforcement, as they enforce the executive orders and ordinances and laws on the books as they are currently written. So I wanted people to know that regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the legality of a local ordinance, you should follow it because it is deemed valid until it is set aside by a court. Now, with all of that being said, the governor's latest actions with the newest executive orders effectively have shut down so many things that I wouldn't call it a shelter in place, but it certainly has that effect. That many businesses not deemed essential are now closed, and the public access to beaches have been closed. I've gotten a lot of questions from people about fishing, about what we can do. Effectively, the governor's executive order closes down all public access points controlled by the state and local governments, whether it's an adjacent parking facility or whether it's a public walkway. Those are now closed. The governor did not close down private access points to beaches or waterways or lakes, rivers, streams. those are still open. People are welcome to continue fishing on these public waterways if they have, if they want to go out there and get on a boat. What they don't want to happen is they don't want large groups of boats congregating and daisy chaining each other and kind of having these offshore boat parties or these sandbar parties that are currently going on. One of the things, I spoke to the director of DNR right before this call, and one of the things that I wanted to convey on behalf of him, as well as the governor, is that a lot of what was happening earlier last week is that I don't think people realized what they were doing, but they were kind of looking for loopholes in how they could congregate. They were looking for loopholes how they could maybe dock on the side of a sandbar and then have a party or have a social gathering. And what that's forcing the government to do is every time that people look for a loophole or look for a way to not exercise social distancing, they force the government to pass executive orders and implement rules that are more constricting, because until this thing has gotten under control, we don't know what we don't know. So I'm telling people on behalf of other agencies to don't look for loopholes, don't look for ways to kick the can, because what's going to happen is you're going to put the state of South Carolina in the position of having to further tighten down from the state level on down. So we also want people to understand that law enforcement officers, when people do look for ways to circumvent the law or to go out and congregate in large groups, and I'm not talking about families going shopping or walking through a park. I'm not talking about a small group of friends. I'm talking crowds congregating. If law enforcement approaches you, understand that anytime that you look for a loophole or you create a situation where there's a large social gathering, you're putting law enforcement and you're putting them at risk and exposing them also, not just yourselves and people you come into contact with, but you're exposing first responders. And so I was kind of asked to convey that they're just doing their jobs. They're doing what they're told to do. They're following orders, and they just want to get home to their families without any risk of exposure to COVID-19. And so they're not out there to try to stop people from exercising legally recognized constitutional rights. And by the way, everyone on this call and everyone not on this call has constitutional rights to assemble, to worship, to ingress, egress, travel, what have you. But we want people to cease as much as they can that additional congregating in public and that unnecessary travel, because it just prolongs this entire process. So we are doing our best to interpret the law in a way that recognizes people's constitutional rights, while at the same time gives local cities and municipalities the guidance they need to mitigate their risk exposure as well as legal liability. And we also want to empower local governments to effectuate what the governor's trying to do, which is curb this entire pandemic in South Carolina. If you have questions about the essential or non-essential aspect of your business, I think folks here on the call have the number to the South Carolina Department of Commerce. They have a hotline. They are consulting with us. I have an attorney assigned with them to determine if a business is in fact essential. The governor's already put out a list, but if you need clarification in your small business, you can call the South Carolina Department of Commerce. I think that number is in some of the guidance put out by the governor's office. If not, call our constituent hotline. We'll try to get that to you. Again, we look forward to continuing to serve this community and be there for you in any ways that you need us to. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Alan, for that clarification on many items we have. A question that we have says, if we do have a stay-at-home order by the governor and manage an essential business, is there a pass or certificate we should provide to employees to help get them to work peacefully?
The short answer to that question is I don't know if the governor and executive agencies enforcing a potential or possible shelter-in-place executive order. I don't know what guidance they're going to provide as to whether or not you'll have a certificate or a golden ticket, if you will, that gets you to and from work. I would imagine at a minimum, you would identify who you are and identify where you're going and what that business is at a very minimum. I don't know that they're going to be giving people some kind of quote unquote get out of jail card, not literally, but you know what I mean. I don't know if that is being published or going to be given out as guidance, but I do know that if you are in one of those identified essential business, listen, police aren't out there looking to throw people in jail. They're not looking out. They're not out, as far as I know, they're not looking for this. They just want to ensure that you are who you say you are and that your business is essential, and they'll probably take you at your word. If additional guidance is provided by the governor's office, they have not provided it to me at this time.
Thank you, Alan. And I know that you've got another call that you need to jump on. We appreciate you taking time out for us today.
Thanks, guys. Good luck to everybody. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. We'll transition now to local government, where we'll hear from Hilton Head Island Mayor John McCann and Town Manager Steve Riley.
Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day in Hilton. Had a great day in South Carolina. First of all, I want to thank Senator Davis for helping us out with the programs with the governor. I want to thank Representative Bradley for getting us in touch with the Attorney General. And I want to thank Sheriff Tanner for his advice and guidance along the way. We've been working, the mayors of the regional towns here have been working with the governor for the last 3 weeks, and we feel we're making great progress in talking to him. Yesterday, I did a video encouraging all my fellow New Yorkers not to come visit. It's the wrong time. That to stay home, wait till the time's right, but not to come down. It hit over 3,000 hits already, so we're looking forward to getting more. Tom Lennox will do one today for Pennsylvania people, and I know Harry Williams is doing one this morning or this afternoon for New Jersey people, asking them to stay home along the way. Today, we're doing another video to our rental agencies, the hotels, villas, whatever you have out there, asking them to voluntarily not to take any reservations for the month of April for 30 days. I'm also asking them in the video to work with the people that have had reservations that want to cancel them to facilitate another day in their calendar where the people could come down with no monetary loss to the people that already booked reservations. I also like to ask a question to Jeremy Clark that could he have a representative from the hospital appear at a council meeting for Hilton Head Plantation as well as Bluffton to give periodic updates. There's the regional meetings or the regional conferences or calls between the mayors continue to go on, and I thank the mayors and the town managers for all the work that they're doing. We got to get a message out soon. I don't know whether it's from the chamber or from us about golf cart etiquette. There can't be two people to a golf cart. There can't be caddies going along with them. It should be one person to a golf cart, no caddies. Golf course etiquette is just as important as social distancing. It's a part of it. We look forward to working with the chamber, and I will turn it over to Steve Riley.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being on this call. Two things. First, our staff continues to work mostly from home. Our fire and rescue personnel we are fully staffed and ready to respond to calls. Like everybody, we have adequate protective gear now. We are concerned about what happens down the road, and that's not unlike any other agency. We had our most recent meeting this week, which was with 3 resolutions. Parts of those have been overcome or kind of put aside, in fact, by the governor's orders. On the parks and beaches, we were closing our own beach parks, parking lots, urging private sector, private POAs to close theirs. On the non-essential, we've begun to develop our own list of non-essential based on what we've seen from other communities and states that have done that. We have a few that we have that the governor's order of yesterday does not have in that Department of Commerce line that Alan Wilson referenced. We'll be using that to try to get some clarification on that. But really the governor's order sort of takes over for what we did. And then, as the mayor already talked about, there's the short-term rental urging companies not to take reservations for the month of April. And we will be working on pushing all that information out as quickly as we can. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mayor. Let's transition to Bluffton now with the Mayor of Bluffton, Lisa Salka, and Town Manager Mark Orlando.
Good morning. I see I'm off mute. Good morning to everyone. I'm not going to repeat what Mayor McCann said, but I'll just ditto to all of our legislative leaders that have really helped guide us as mayors through this kind of crazy path we're on. And the same to my chief and sheriff also, very helpful. We're all in this together. And I've just seen nothing like this. I mean, we are working together, talking to each other, giving ideas to each other, while at the same time going down our own paths, watching out for our own citizens. We had a meeting last night online. We have followed the guidelines of the governor and of Attorney General Wilson on what we can enforce. And I think we're getting that message out, really the facts about what we can enforce. A lot of confusion from everyone on essential versus non-essential. So I guess this is a question or a request to you too as well, Bill. People, you know, it's like Alan Wilson said, they're always trying to find loopholes. And my response to a lot of people are just stop trying to find the loopholes. Don't try to see if you can still play tennis. Just don't play tennis. You know, just let's have some personal responsibility. 15 days is not very long, but wouldn't it be great if we saw some results from this 15-day order? So we need some help on what's essential, what's non-essential based on the Homeland Security list. And I really praise Governor McMaster of keeping it simple and just saying what's non-essential. It makes it really easy. We are really worried about these non-essential businesses that now are closed. And I know we are looking at, along with all of the other groups, on what we can do down the road to help these non-essential businesses to get up and running. It's very serious that, you know, they may not come back to work. So what can we do as towns, as a state, as a country to get these guys back up and running when they can? So I'd give Bluffton an A. I'd love to give us an A+, but we do still have a little bit of confusion over 6 feet. You know, I think you can put both arms up and know that's about 6 feet, so we can estimate. But for overall, all of our businesses have closed that felt like they needed to. And the ones that are open have told me, you know, and I've seen them say, could you stay outside till this customer leaves, or can you just back up at the curbside takeout? So I'm just really proud of all of us. And I love these. I can't thank you enough, Bill, for doing this. It's full of information. And I'm just so happy to be part of it. And we will get through this. We will. So Mark, I don't know if Mark's on. He had another call this morning, but he could speak to short-term rentals and what we're doing. Oh, there's Mark. So I'll pass it. Big catch.
I caught it. Good morning, everybody, and definitely echoing Steve and Mayor Salka, so I won't repeat anything. Bill, except for Bill, thank you for your leadership for getting us all on these calls. Just on this, there's over 300 people right now. So anyway, I just want to share a little bit about our town staff. 50% of town staff are working remote, and a bunch more are working mobile. So we've got a lot of folks still working. 100% of our business is open. We're just not all checking into town hall every day, as well as our other buildings, with the exception, of course, our police department. They are very proactively educating and enforcing governor's orders. So as Governor McMaster issues his new orders, our police department is very proactive in the businesses, in the communities, at the parks over the last few weeks, talking, educating, and letting folks know that this is an enforceable issue. Our business license group, every time a governor's order is affecting a business, we are contacting our roster of businesses. In conjunction with the recent governor's order of closing docks and ramps and access to waterways, we went ahead and, effective this morning at 7 a.m., closed all of our parks, and that includes pavilions, playgrounds, open spaces, restrooms, all in. So all public spaces in the town of Bluffton, all public parks are closed effective 7 a.m. That's my update for today, and thanks again.
Mark, thank you very much. And Mayor Salka, thank you. I've heard a couple of hellos there. I've got a couple of questions for the towns, but I've been hearing a hello, and I think maybe we have U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham on the line with us now. Lindsey, are you with us? Okay, we'll continue to wait for that. The question for either the town of Hilton Head Island or the town of Bluffton, and it's from Paul asking, why do our rules and regulations have to be based on what other communities are doing? Why can't they be based on data that's relevant to us? Either Bluffton or Hilton Head like to answer that one?
Hey, Bill, I thought you were asking Hilton Head, so I kind of chimed out on the first part of your question, but we're happy to answer it if you'll repeat it for me. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Glad to. And it says, why do our rules and regulations have to be based on what other communities are doing? Why can't they be based on data that's relevant to us?
Well, I'll answer, but I'm sure Mayor McKee, Steve, or Mark can. I don't see that our towns are doing things based on what others are doing. I think we're being very out of the box and thinking what's best for our citizens. So I don't think we are, but I do think we're following the mandate and the order of the lone person that can make these, and that is the governor. And that is not getting out clearly enough. Other towns who have passed other shelter in place, they aren't enforceable. So I'm going to throw that to one of these other three to chime in, and I see Mark.
Yeah, we are.
Mark, Steve.
You're on, Mayor.
Bill, this is John McCann. We are definitely not following anybody else. I mean, we are thinking out of the box. We are working together with the 4 towns around us, to have a policy that works for everything. But we're not following anybody else. That is not who we are. It's not what we do. We are just generally not followers, Bill.
This is Steve. The only other thing I guess I would say to folks is kind of like the people who are looking for loopholes. If you're sitting back waiting for government to tell you to do something, don't do that. Do what's right for you. Forget what the government order is, because for people who deliberately want to find loopholes, the governor's order or our orders don't mean a dang thing. It's important that you take care of yourself. What can you do about you and your loved ones? Stay away from people who are violating the rules. Don't wait into the middle of them. Don't ask me to go arrest them. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Bill,
Yes.
and Bill, I've got one thing to chime in too to answer that question directly as well. So as an example, Bluffton closed its parks yesterday. I'm not sure that Beaufort County and all other places closed their parks the way we have. We definitely have a busy and very, very active historic district. And so that worked for us. I also know that we're putting together a small business resource guide and potentially potentially a local stimulus plan. And so again, those are things that, as they're affecting Bluffton, we're putting together. I think what perhaps might be misconstrued is we are definitely communicating with everybody. We communicate with our neighbors, our partners across the state and even across the country. But at the end of the day, I know that councils are making decisions based upon what's important to them in their own community. I echo Steve. I've said this the other day. We don't need to wait for the governor to mandate that we stay home. Just stay home. We don't need to wait for him to tell us to evacuate. If a hurricane's coming, you're allowed to leave before he tells you to. And so this kind of goes in the same light. Do what's best. Pay attention to the CDC. If you're in doubt, look at what the CDC is telling you to do.
Hello, I've got Senator Graham here on the line.
Great, thank you. We'll go straight to the senator. Senator Graham, thank you for being with us this morning, and thanks for what you're doing for South Carolina as well as America. Maybe star 6.
Hello?
Yes.
I did. I just hit star 6.
You're on. We have you, Senator, and welcome to the call.
Well, great. Thanks for having me. I know these are tough times, so I'll just get right to it. The first thing I want to do is talk about the legislation we passed. Have y'all been briefed at all about what's in this bill?
We have somewhat, but certainly always want to hear for what you have to say.
Okay, so the $1,200 payment per person for 75,000 or less, it goes to people on Social Security, it goes to disability. You don't have to file a tax return. They'll look at the 2019 return. If you haven't filed that, they'll look at your 2018 return to determine eligibility. $2,400 per couple, $500 per child. So if you're a family for around $3,000, should be coming the next 2 or 3 weeks. Unemployment. This is going to be the point of the bottleneck. In the state of South Carolina, the most you can get for unemployment benefits is $326 a week. The federal government said it's $600 on top of that for every unemployed person in the country. Here's the problem. These unemployment systems are very old and outdated in terms of computer technology. I'm afraid it's going to take a long time for the system to process the number of claims. We're looking at 20% unemployment throughout the country. We went from 3% to 20% in about a month here. Here's the problem. I want you to get 100% of your wages up to $50,000. The computer cannot do that. So if you're making $15 an hour, that's $600 a week. Well, the difference between $326 and $600 is what I want to pay you. I want you to be made whole. The problem is the computers can't do that, so they're going to give everybody a $600 check. People will have their wages increased by 50% in unemployment. That's going to make it really hard to hire people. Amazon and Walmart and maybe some people on this phone call are looking for folks to hire because the computer can't actually do your actual wages. They're going to pay you $926 a month on a week on unemployment. That's $23.14 an hour. We've got to get that fixed because it's going to prevent people from hiring because people are going to sit there for 4 months and draw $23 an hour versus going to work for 16 or 17. So I'm all over that. We've got to get the checks out the door. The small business loans are the lifeline of this bill. Tim Scott had a lot to do with it. If you got less than 500 people, you can go to a bank certified by the SBA, Small Business Administration, borrow 2.5 times your payroll. As of March the 1st, the people were on your payroll, and you can get your rent included, mortgage interest payments, normal operating business, insurance on your business or your building. One condition, you got to keep 90% of your employees on the payroll. And if you'll do that, 2 months of the loan will be forgiven. It becomes a grant, but you got to keep the people on the payroll. It's a 4% loan for a 10-year period. The first payment's due next year. But if you do what I just described, keep people on the payroll, 90% of your employees, then the first 2 months of this loan becomes a grant. The question you got to ask yourself, will I be in business a year from now? So with that, I'll take some questions. That's the highlight of the business stuff. On the disease side, Bill, this thing spreads about 3 times more infectious than the flu. These social distancing measures are designed to starve the virus. They're working on therapies to make it go from like a 10 to 1 or 2 that people don't die in such large numbers. You don't stay in the hospital so long. These drug therapies are showing promise. The eventual solution is a vaccine to kill this thing. That's probably about a year away. Next couple of weeks are going to be very tough for the New York area. We've had a spike here in South Carolina. The more social distancing we practice, the less the spread. The Congress will go back into session probably now around May. There'll be another pot of money coming. States are going to get $150 billion divided up based on a formula not yet determined, a minimum of $1.25 billion per state. So at least $1.25 billion will be coming to South Carolina to help pay for the expenses. The bottom line is that the governor controls most of the money, and local municipalities and counties will be working with the governor to figure out how to help. There's $117 billion in the bill for hospitals. Hospitals have lost revenue because they don't do elective surgery to keep those beds available for really sick people. and that's been a revenue drop for hospitals. There'll be some money to help them get through this. A lot of money for protective equipment. It was $2.2 trillion. It's the largest single expenditure in the history of the federal government, twice the size of the New Deal, and most likely we're going to be doing this again until we get this thing behind us. I'm hoping the summer will blunt the blow of the virus. It doesn't do well with the heat and humidity, but it's likely to come back in the fall. That's why we need to use the spring and the summer to stock up medical supplies and develop vaccines and therapies to treat the disease so it's not so damaging to individuals and it doesn't shut the whole economy down. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Thanks, Senator. One that has come in from Linda. She's asking about what about tipped employees? Keep them on the payroll at $750, but they can get unemployment at $23 an hour. Any suggestions?
That's the problem right there. So if you got employees like a bartender who may average $17 an hour, they'll actually get, what they earn on the payroll. So when you go borrow money as a small business, say you borrow a restaurant, you look at your payroll as of, I think it's February the 15th. Any employee on your payroll March the 1st you can bring back. You can pay them up to $100,000, but you can't exceed what their actual wages were. This is a great way to keep employees connected to the employer. The problem is that the unemployment compensation package has created a problem because it is $23 an hour. So hopefully the employee would look long term and say, I'm better off staying with the company I've been working for. I get benefits because your benefit package can be part of the loan, and that will entice some people to stay. But until we fix this unemployment loophole, it's going to be hard to retain people. And here's what I want to do to fix it. You can get compensated up to 100% of your wages, but you can't get more than your wages. That would fix it.
Thanks for that answer, Senator. Another question relating to the CARES Act and Phase 4 and when that might be coming about.
Well, let's get Phase 3 right. I want to make sure we can get the unemployment system working. Most of the technology is back to the 70s. You'll see unemployment numbers tomorrow that will rock your boat. 3 million people applied for unemployment last week. South Carolina's system crashed. So before we put new money into that part of the system, I want to get the current Phase 3 up working. Phase 4 could be a stimulus bill when we see a downturn in the disease. Hopefully by the summer we see the disease going down. When do you turn the corner? When there are less infections, 1 week versus the other week, when therapies are available to treat the disease more aggressively and a vaccine's on the horizon. So Phase 4, I think, is going to be a stimulus bill that could help us with our roads and our bridges. If President Trump does a $2 trillion infrastructure bill, South Carolina, I-73 down at Myrtle Beach, in your area, 17, there's so much we could do with that much money for our ports, our roads, and our bridges. Phase 4 will include money for the states. Just think of the revenue loss. The coast of South Carolina is a cash cow for South Carolina. The sales tax that you generate, being a tourism economy, that's going to be really lessened. I don't think people are going to travel in large numbers in the summer. So Phase 4 is going to be helping state and local government and more money, I think, for small businesses. I think small businesses, the two months of grants may be extended. So that's what I see in Phase 4.
Senator, thank you. Also, thank you for supporting South Carolina restaurants. So you had a nice to-go order last night from a great restaurant there in Greenville. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you for your leadership and all you're doing for our country.
Well, thank you, and to our doctors and nurses and EMT types, they're the heroes. And small business, you're in my mind because that's where I came from. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Senator. We'll transition now to our Beaufort County Council and Chairman Joe Passman. Joe, it's not hard following Senator Graham.
It sure is. What I want to do is I want to reiterate what has been said already. We are in constant contact with our local municipalities about what they are doing. We collaborate, we consult, we are trying to do what is right for every citizen here. Our mayors and myself are constantly meeting about what they are doing, what their needs are, what can we do to help them. Our county administrator is meeting on a regular basis with her counterparts within the county, within the state, and nationally, so that we are up to date with as much information as we possibly can, making the right decisions. But the most important thing I want to stress is the learned behavior of constantly doing the right thing, washing your hands, social distancing. As long as we keep reiterating that practice, it becomes a learned behavior, it becomes something natural. Forget about the loopholes. The people who are doing the right thing know that this will work. And so that's all the things that I have to say. Everybody has said some great things. We're doing wonderful things here. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for joining us today. Dr. Rodriguez, Beaufort County School Superintendent, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me and for organizing these, Bill. Very helpful. I just wanted to share with everyone in terms of the school district, we're continuing with our online learning platform for students. Additionally, we have learning packets for students that are not able to access internet. We're looking at some possibilities to expand the bandwidth from our local, not bandwidth, I'm sorry, the amount of area or coverage of our internet at our school buildings so that it would cover the parking lot area a little bit so that families who don't have the access at home, when they're coming through either for meal distribution, if they park without getting out of their vehicles, they'd be able to download the learning packets, and that would minimize the need to have people making copies or some of that distribution piece. So that's one possible way we're looking at doing that. Additionally, yesterday we received some guidance from the South Carolina Department of Education regarding this fourth quarter of work for students and how that's graded, making sure that we're working with our seniors to graduate on time. And some of that guidance still has some questions in it. So we're seeking clarification this week on that. Today and tomorrow, and we're hopeful to put out some clarification for our parents and our families with those obvious concerns. One concern that we have heard is respect to the attendance and marking students present and that sort of thing. South Carolina Department of Education has essentially waived that because everybody's learning online right now, which means everybody is present, right? So that concern is really off the table for everyone. We continue with the distribution of meals to any child under the age of 18 who needs a breakfast and a lunch. We have hit over 65,000 meals now, essentially through a drive-through process that we have in place at some different locations. And the only other piece I would add is on April 7th, we will have our board meeting online. So it will be a virtual, if you will, board meeting that will take place on April 7th. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, and thank you for your leadership. And 65,000 drive-throughs, that's an incredible number. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to Dr. Michael Kaka with DHEC. Dr. Kaka.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for the chance to speak today. I'll share some comments, what DHEC's doing at the state level, and be available for questions after my comments. So as of today, South Carolina has confirmed cases of COVID-19 in 42 counties. This includes 158 additional cases across our state as of yesterday. So there are 91 confirmed cases in Beaufort County and 65 cases reported in the last week. We are at the point at which we are receiving solemn reminders daily of how serious this disease is. It has challenged us as individuals and as a state, and has taken the lives of our neighbors and loved ones. Thus, it is incumbent upon all of us to take action to stop the spread of this disease. We have experienced a shortage of chemicals needed to perform testing on COVID-19 nationwide and within South Carolina. DHEC's laboratory now has the necessary reagents, and as of yesterday has resumed turnaround times of about 24 to 48 hours once specimens are received in our lab. Additionally, we continue to work with healthcare providers to stay updated on the availability of hospital beds throughout our state. As of earlier today, hospital beds were reported at approximately 54% capacity. To date, we have reported receiving 1,083 confirmed cases from our public health laboratory and private laboratories. So we are all in this together, and with your help, our hope is to minimize the risk for everyone. But our focus now is on protecting those at highest risk of exposure and complications from infection. We are continuing to learn more about how this new virus is being transmitted. Some information does give us hope. For example, the CDC is reporting some evidence that community interventions are beginning to take effect in some locations. But there's also some worrisome news that reminds us that we must maintain reminds us why these must be maintained and possibly strengthened. There's growing evidence of possible transmission from infected persons before they have symptoms. Public health recommendations are being updated based on evolving findings. From the perspective of protecting the public health, we are focusing on reducing transmission through social distancing of all people in all potentially affected areas. We will not be able to stop all infections. At some point, the majority of us will likely be exposed. But we can reduce deaths by assuring that healthcare workers and healthcare facilities can continue to provide excellent care for those who need it most. We encourage all South Carolinians to follow the guidance of our public health professionals and to, when possible, stay home and limit your close contact with others. This is a challenging time and it will not end soon. And what we're calling on everyone across the state to do, we know is not easy. Here in South Carolina and across the country, we are now faced with making very difficult decisions about the most effective measures we can take to save lives. Among our priorities, two are of particular focus at this time. The first is protecting those at highest risk of complications from infection that will reduce hospitalizations and will save lives. The second is protecting those at highest risk of ongoing exposure. Our healthcare facilities must be prepared to provide intensive care, and healthcare workers must be protected so that they are available for patient care. Yet we still need to continue to protect everyone. Fighting this disease will require all of us continuing to work together collectively to achieve the best outcomes for all possible. If we don't do this, if we don't follow the guidance for social distancing and staying home, then we will see higher rates of cases similar to what have been seen in other states. We must do our part to protect ourselves and others. And for latest information, please do visit our webpage, scdhec.gov/COVID-19. And I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Doctor. One from Mary Ellen here. Are the COVID tests being used FDA approved? And what is the estimated percentage of accuracy with the tests being used?
So the tests are approved by the FDA through emergency authorization. It's kind of a legal process that allows testing to get to the market a little bit faster, which is needed. The accuracy, it's very accurate when it does detect the virus. There are some concerns that in some cases it may not be able to predict the virus, to detect the virus. It depends a lot on the technique used, the timing when the specimen is collected, how much virus is available at the time that the specimen is collected. So those are some of the factors that may cause it to be falsely negative when the person is actually infected. So that's some of the things that we're looking at.
Another question here from Wanda. The COVID results were being posted by zip code. Do you all plan to continue to do that?
We will continue to do that, yes.
Thank you. And that's all the questions we have for you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll move right into Jeremy Clark, the CEO of Hilton Head Regional Healthcare. Jeremy?
Good morning. Bill, can you hear me?
Sure can. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, great. Thank you for having me. As in previous weeks, Hilton Head Regional Healthcare continues to operate effectively and safely. And I continue to be incredibly impressed with the courage and the willingness to serve of our colleagues and our medical staff. And I continue to feel very good about the plans that we have in place to take care of our community. You know, first and foremost, we're focused on keeping our patients, staff, and physicians safe. As we've previously announced, we have eliminated visiting hours at both Hilton Head Hospital and Coastal Carolina Hospital, with only a few limited exceptions. Everyone, including our staff and physicians entering the hospital, are now screened with questions about their health and their travel history, and their temperature is being taken as well. All of this is in an effort to minimize the number of people inside the hospital and again, keep our community safe. I know that there continue to be a lot of questions related to capacity. First, we have already taken our patient census down significantly from what it normally is this time of year. We are also postponing elective and non-urgent surgeries where a delay will not adversely impact a patient's health. So we already have more capacity, beds, and staff available today than we normally do. Second, another thing to understand is that in an emergency, many hospitals, including ours, can increase their capacity over their licensed bed count and are able to provide ventilator assistance to more patients than the actual number of ventilators they have in-house. So while we have 150 licensed beds and 13 ventilators in our system, I want you to know that in the event that we see a surge of patients that need to be hospitalized, we are prepared to react accordingly. We have the ability to provide simultaneous ventilator assistance to an increased number of patients by converting anesthesia machines that we currently have available in-house. We've also solidified our plans to maximize our capacity in a way that allows us to increase the number of ICU level beds that we have. For patients that may not require as high of a level of care, we have the ability to repurpose existing space inside the hospital to care for them as well. And finally, we're working with local emergency management officials on plans to provide care outside the hospital if needed. You know, finally, I think there's a lot of fear in the community, fear nationally, and that's understandable. I would just continue to ask everyone to refrain from spreading rumors and instead focus on the facts. Please continue to seek information from reputable websites such as DHEC and the CDC to stay informed. I will just say a special thank you to all of our local government officials who have been great during this, and a great big thanks to our community. We've received so much support from the community during this process. Our staff are incredibly appreciative, and I am incredibly appreciative as well. So, Bill, I'll toss it back to you.
Jeremy, thank you. And I'll follow up on a question that Mayor McCann had about a representative periodically attending council meetings from the hospital for updates.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. Okay, Jeremy, thank you. We'll move on to Dwayne Parrish. And Dwayne, let's hear a tourism update from around the state.
Yes, good morning, Bill, and good morning, everyone on the call. Just a brief update as to where we are from a statewide perspective. There are 371 hotels closed in South Carolina. That's about 25% of our total inventory in the state. Of that total of 371, 263 are in the Grand Strand area due to local ordinance codes that require them to close. Statewide occupancy of those that remain open hovers in the 10 to 15% range. Those that are higher, extended stay hotels such as Residence Inn and the like are faring better. I heard on one of the local elected folks talk earlier about asking hotels to not take any new reservations. There are a number of military, medical, and transportation, i.e. truck drivers, that are traveling. And this became an issue when Myrtle Beach closed all their hotels. I would caution that you don't want to interrupt the supply line of truck drivers coming in. And then lastly, there are a number of families who had a member that has been self-quarantined at home where the balance of the family has gone and checked into a hotel. I understand the urgency of or not wanting people, particularly in the hotspot areas, checking in, but I would caution against not taking any quote unquote new reservations. Restaurant restrictions remain in place for the life of the executive order of the governor. That is allowing only takeout, drive-through, and delivery. And that is in effect through the life of that, not just April 30th, but the life of the executive order. All state parks are closed at this time through the end of April. We do, however, have a Facebook Live post at 10 o'clock each morning, actually one going on as I speak. The governor issued an executive order yesterday closing non-essential businesses as listed. If there's any confusion to anyone, just simply Google search South Carolina Executive Order 2020-17. Again, 2020-17. You can certainly look at that executive order. The self-quarantine that the governor ordered for visitors from those hotspot areas of the tri-state area and the New Orleans area is in effect for any visitor coming to the state for 14 days to self-quarantine. Air service is slowly grinding to a halt around all of the state, with the number of flights down at different airports anywhere from as little as 50% to as high as 90% of flights in some places. It's already been talked about, but there are a myriad of loans and community development block grant opportunities, and the CARES Act that was recently passed by Congress. I know that's been talked about. We've provided that information to the hospitality industry in the last couple of days. And lastly, as most of you are aware, all public beaches are closed. And both the public access, the boat ramps that was talked a little bit earlier about the Attorney General and others. Bill, that concludes my report, pending any questions.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm not seeing any questions right now, so thank you for once again joining us and keeping up the good fight. Let's move now to hear from our air. You're welcome. Let's move now to our airports. And while not too long ago, on a normal day, we'd have about 2.5 million people flying per day in the country. And yesterday, it was less than 200,000. And let's see, draw that a little closer to home, and we'll hear from Lori Lina, Director of Marketing at the Savannah Hilton Head International Airport.
Good morning, everyone. I will just do a quick update. Currently, all airport hotels are operating and open, but they do have very low occupancies. Gulfstream remains open. Our fixed base operators are open. And in the airport terminal, the retail and concession areas are open, but on a very limited basis. Commercial flights are continuing for essential travel, of course, and operating with a very reduced schedule, like Dwayne mentioned. We're having about 30 cancellations a day, give or take a few. We're averaging around 200 departing passengers per day. The arrivals are a little less, around 150. Delta actually had a flight yesterday that had one passenger on it, which is hard to believe. This time last year, in April, we would be averaging about 4,500 departing passengers. So since the reduction of the flight started, we're down about 86%, which is right on par for the rest of the country. Like Dwayne said, air travel is going down. On Monday, this is just to give you some perspective. On Monday, TSA screened a 10-year record low number of passengers, which was only 154,000. That's in the whole United States. Last week, it was 331,000. And for reference, on the same day in 2019, it was 2.36 million. So that's where we are today.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lori. Let's move to John Rimbold, Hilton Head Airport Director.
Hey, good morning. I wish I had some more promising news than what Lori's got, but it's about the same at Hilton Head Island, a little bit different scale. We've got American Airlines is running one fewer flight than is normally scheduled. Same thing with Delta. But again, those flights have very, very few people on board, either coming in or leaving. United's back in service as well. They're flying just one daily to Dulles, but those actually have been canceled Monday, Tuesday, and today so far, and they're just playing that schedule day by day. Typically, they have their weekend flights to Newark, but those were supposed to start last week. It did not. It was canceled, and it seems to be canceled for this week as well. So we don't have any direct flights into or out of any of the hotspot areas. So the commercial activity is very, very low. General aviation is also pretty low. We have had a couple of flights that have come in from the New York, New Jersey area, and those are typically one or two people who fly in on a chartered aircraft or a private aircraft. And just what we've done on that end of things is we've got a poster that is from DHEC and EMD that talks about the governor's executive order about folks who are visiting from those areas to quarantine for either the 14 days or the time period that they're visiting, whichever is shorter. And those are posted in both our commercial services terminal as well as the general aviation terminal. And we've put those in conspicuous places at all the exits and desks and counters where folks will see those. So we're trying to do our part to notify. And then, of course, we've got the event type sign that's out on Beach City Road reminding the few folks who are flying in that quarantine is in effect.
John, thank you. Thank you for that update. And our final speaker today is Billy Watterson of the Watterson Brands, also representing the Watterson Family Foundation. And Billy's going to talk to us about a new initiative called Help for Hope. Billy?
Thank you so much, Bill, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have this platform to speak on behalf of the Watterson Family Foundation. I just wanted to say that over the past 3 weeks, our country has experienced a slow dismantling of our lives as Americans. We have been stripped of the routines and isolated from human connection. We feel powerless, paralyzed by fear, and uncertain as to when life will return back to normal. 9 days ago, my wife and I had enough, and we decided to take our power back. Because the food service industry in Bluffton and Hilton Head is really the backbone of our local economy, we knew that we had to start there. So we assembled a team of local leaders. We created an economic stimulus program, and it's called Help for Hope. Our goal is to raise $5 million and inject it into the restaurant community over the next 8 weeks. The mission is to help feed families affected by this crisis, support local restaurants, and ultimately save jobs. This is a stabilization program. It is not a fix. It's just to get us to the other side of this crisis. How does it work? Help for Hope creates a common currency called a community investment card, which donors will fund and trusted community partners will distribute to those affected by this crisis, empowering them to deploy this capital back into participating restaurants of their choice. In the midst of darkness, we choose hope over despair, faith over our fear. We will not be consumed by this darkness. Together, our community will rise again, and we hope this program may be a beacon of light to others, offering a model for economic stabilization in their communities. For more information, I'd ask you to visit www.helpforhopenow.org. Again, that's www.help4hopenow.org. Visit, engage, and replicate. I'd like to thank the Hope for Help leadership team, our community partners and sponsors for making this initiative possible. I'd also like to thank Bill Miles and his team from the Hilton Head-Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. You guys have been amazing to work with. Mayor Lisa Salka, City Manager Mark Orlando, Mayor John McCann, and City Manager Steve Riley for your relentless leadership during this challenging time. Thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you, Billy, and we're excited for that, and to have a meal, help a business, and keep jobs. So important, and thank you for the initiative, and we're honored to be partnering with you on that. Just had a message from State Representative Jeff Bradley, and Jeff has set up a food and beverage conference call with Senator Scott's office today. And if you're interested in that, the dial-in number is 855-428-0808. And the ID number that you would need is 673-4344. And Kelly Brunson will post that on our site. that information so you have that, and we'll also be getting a message out immediately to our restaurants. We encourage you to also be a part of the additional webinars that we're hosting that take a deeper dive on the CARES Act and how to manage your business cash flow and other great information. You can get that today on our COVID page at HiltonHead-BlufftonChamber.org. It's HiltonHead-BlufftonChamber.org. And remember that we are here and we're with you and willing, and we will get through this together. Your Chamber of Commerce is committed to helping you respond to the coronavirus so you can support your employees, customers, families, and community. We will continue working every day to help you weather the storm and emerge even stronger, just as we have at other challenging times in our nation's history. Thank you for joining us today. No, we went a little longer than normal. Just lots of important information to get out there. Again, thank you and goodbye.